Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host Karthik, and today's guest is someone who spent the last decade building what so many startups struggle with, sales development engines that actually convert. I'm joined by Vandana. She's built SDR teams across the US and APAC, coaching reps into consistent quota hitters. In our chat before, what really struck me was how she's thinking about coaching, how she's thinking about rep hiring, and how she's managing US shifts and how all of that is pushing her to go deeper into what she truly loves, building and giving back. Vandana, welcome to Sales is Cool.
Thank you so much, Karthik, for the introduction. I think you beautifully summed it up. I'm all about people, I'm all about sales, and sales development is some area where I've just stuck from the very beginning.
You want to dive into some rapid fire questions? What's the one thing you always have on your desk besides your laptop?
My notebook, so I'm one person who's still like a pen and paper girl who'll always write down notes.
If you weren't in sales, what job would you be doing right now?
Oh, okay. I think I would have loved to become like a doctor, maybe like a vet, something related to pets and mental health. So anything around these two areas, if I were not even I was not in sales.
What's your go-to comfort binge or a book or a show or maybe even a podcast?
Recently I think I've been hooked to 30 minutes to President's Club.
Last one is what's something very random that you've Googled this week?
This week. I don't know if I've Googled random things, but I'm definitely looking at where I could go next for my travel.
Right. Okay, let's go into your journey, right? Let's you've spent 10 years in the SaaS sales world. Take us back a bit. How did you get into this world of outbound, of pipeline, people management?
I'll be honest, I was a finance major
Okay.
and I joined my MBA only with that notion that, hey, I'm a CS and I will take this MBA in finance and then I'll get into investment banking and there's those kind of fancy jobs. But the moment I went in, and I always had this inclination towards sales, marketing, sponsorship, those kind of things. But then the moment I entered, I think I changed my mind. And then I just went on for this campus placement.
Okay.
And luckily, I got an SDR role. So really not knowing how is it different from like selling end to end. Like I had zero idea by then. But then obviously, since I've just come out of MBA, I had this notion of researching a lot. So I researched the role and I often, would hear from my manager that you don't learning about the product, do you? I'm like, no, but I don't know about this role. So like, I would like just research. I think every day when I go to office, like, what is this SDR role? How am I supposed to send manual emails and track it on an Excel file and figure out when do I follow up with this prospect and then put a drop down in that Excel file that I followed up. So I was just trying to make my life easy and just put in a lot of hours into researching, and hence I became started becoming like a pro.
Nice. And talk to me about, some key turning points in your career. You started your role out of college, got placed in campus. What are some of the other milestones in this 10-year career?
Yeah, I think once I was promoted in account executive role, and I would say that was literally not that great there. And I always would like to go back to sales development, always would like to go back to SDR and say, okay, so what are you doing? Like, can you do this like this? So I was always inclined towards that. So I think when COVID hit, right, and I was jobless for a while, that's when I actually started researching as to what kind of roles do I actually enter? Like, do I want to get into an end-to-end role? Really, like, do I really get into that? And at that point in time, ClickPost happened. So I was offered a founding SDR role then.
Okay.
That was a turning point because I think I always had this in me wherein I would maybe research something, maybe I'll come up with some idea and just share it with the group. And I
Mhm.
would really enjoy seeing them use those things. So, for example, LinkedIn, right? Like LinkedIn by at that point in time, I'm talking about 2019, it wasn't like a very renowned platform to use for prospecting. Like people would still rely on cold calls and emails, not really LinkedIn. And I'll be very honest, the account executives weren't using it. So I think I was the first one who's like, hey, I know it. And I'm like, I would train the entire group. Why not?
And I mean, now, like we were chatting earlier, right? You work US shifts, assuming it's evenings to really early in the morning. What are
Yeah.
some tips to keep yourself and your reps super focused while the rest of the country sleeps and you guys are working? What do you do to stay sharp?
I think structure is really important. A lot of times you don't even know, like, okay, the day has started. What do you really need to do? So I think something that we follow to the T is blocking our calendar for every hour possible,
Okay.
even the breaks that we would want as a group, and following it to the max. So I think that structure brings a lot of clarity. Okay, so on a Monday, like what do we really need to do? And by the way, every day's calendar looks a little bit different. It just helps us stay focused because you can get distracted a lot during that night time because nobody is there in office. It's just looking at each other faces. So I think that structure has built in a lot of momentum in the team.
Okay, now we'll shift to founders and SDRs, and you mentioned your time at ClickPost, and I'm assuming it was the founder who gave you that
Hmm.
spirit and
True.
liberty to try and test out things. So if I'm a founder and I'm hiring my first rep, I'm hiring a founding SDR. What
Hmm.
do you usually get wrong?
Um, I think what usually people do wrong is like they have this notion that I want to hire the polished rep who has the experience, but they often mistake with the fact that they bring in a lot of preconceived notion with themselves, and they will only try to strategize. I mean, they only know few things and they will only like to experiment with those. So I think what founders really need to know is first bring in a lot of different personalities. So if they are hiring a founding SDR role, um, they really need to see whether they have done the kind of research or not
Yeah.
in the very first place. Like, are they research oriented? Have they went ahead a little bit more than the other SDRs and, let's say maybe build out a document file to show that, okay, I think these are the ICPs. I think these are the messaging that could work. Or I think this could be the channel that could work, and ask a lot of important questions in it, intelligent question in the very first round or two. Um, but I think what usually is happening is like they're seeing that, okay, this particular person has worked in XYZ organization and must be good.
Mm.
But that's really not the case that happens. You really need to understand whether that person is hungry enough. But because I've often seen that people who are not just started or they have had some kind of SDR experience, they are they're in that hurry to jump ships. Um, so even if you get that founding SDR person, he or she might be a little impatient with the job. And founding SDR role, trust me, it has to come with a lot of patience. You don't know what entails for you in the long run. You could be into managerial role, you could get into some other role, or you could be a founding SDR role for quite some time, right? Because the company's growth is depending upon not just the role, right? It depending upon XYZ other factors as well. So are you okay with that? Are you okay with that daily hustle of not having anyone to tell you, but you having that kind of like resourceful mindset? So I think just not following any playbook is a good start.
Lovely. And just taking from what you've said, and you said something very pertinent, right? Don't look at the brand, look at the person behind the brand, right? So my follow up to you is what are the traits that you need to look for as a founder that's beyond a resume? Because let's face it, right? Um, Everyone nowadays is putting their CV into Chat GPT, looking at the job description. So all CVs are starting to look the same. Uh,
Hmm.
you know, what do you look for as traits beyond the CV?
Um, so I think an SDR role, and it could be a founding SDR role or any other SDR role,
Yeah.
they have to operate like a marketer, right? Because they need to be a little bit more creative as to what are they really trying to pitch. Are they just following one or two sentences, or they really understand that, okay, we need to tweak it according to the ICP. So they have to operate like a marketer. They have to behave like a consultant. They don't really need to sell anything, right? I have come across cases wherein I have said no to prospects, right? So you should know when to stop, and a consultant does that job really well.
Yeah.
Right. So you need to know, okay, whether this is actually the prospect that you need to sell it to, and it would end up being into an opportunity or not. So having that consultative approach to selling. And the third is, can they hustle like an entrepreneur? SDR role is the toughest. The daily motivation has to come from within, right? Those incentives, the spiffs can come and go, but are you really into the game? So I think these three things very important.
Nice. Just for this is a 30 minutes to President's Club question. What's a spiff?
All right. So often, SDR, they have to convert a lot of like leads, right?
Yeah.
So it's usually like a marketing driven campaign that if you book X number of meetings within X number of days, you are entitled to a certain number of incentives, right? That's an add-on. So it's just like how you incentivize SDRs to do a little bit more because sometimes the work gets a little bit mundane, right? So to break the monotony and to bring in, let's say, a lot of marketers, they are doing a lot of ABM campaigns. Um, Founders have now shifted to a lot more account based prospecting than a lead based prospecting. So how can we join hands with marketing a little bit more? So these spiffs come into play. We incentivize, and at the same time we are helping marketing achieve our goal together. Yes.
Okay, you've talked about the good things, right? What
Hmm.
a subtle red flag in an interview that a founder should be wary of if that comes on.
Yeah, I think in this era of ChatGPT, because we have talked about this a lot, I think a lot of buzzwords coming in,
Yeah,
and you really not knowing the meaning of it. So I think I've heard interviews, or even like, I think if I can connect to some founders, they would agree. People telling exactly what you intend to hear, but when you deep dive, there is a 15 or 20-second pause, right? So I think it's really important to notice where all those pauses coming in.
yeah,
Are they really like prepared answers, or is it coming from their experience? So, and I would say that we don't have to tell reps to not prepare. They would do that.
yeah,
It's the questions that we are asking, right? We need not ask questions which I think it's a little bit high level or not coming from their own experience, given that it's just could be their first or second job.
yeah.
So I think again, like founders ask very similar questions to every interviews whatsoever, and not really trying to understand the person behind the interview.
Interesting. So you're saying double click, ask probing questions, understand whether these experiences are lived by the rep or they are shared, and I think the probing questions really will separate that.
Yes.
You mentioned, and I know how passionate you are about hiring. The last time we had a conversation, I think you touched upon the fact that you don't do hiring the conventional way, right?
Hmm.
Would love to understand a hiring win that you've had. Someone who didn't look the part uh, came on board and crushed it.
I have a lot of examples, and trust me, every team that I've built, you wouldn't see clones and you wouldn't see anyone coming from very similar backgrounds, not at all. So, first of all, I think what I do, I take hiring as my ownership
Yeah,
and I don't just rely on the HR's instincts because they are not from this industry. They are definitely helping aid, but what I really do is like I reach out to folks. I create my own pipeline, and then I ask HR to how he or she can, help me screen.
yeah,
So I think first is like owning that hiring piece yourself. Second is looking beyond resumes. I really don't see whether they're coming from A college, B college, could be a dropout. I'm okay. It could be a person from a non-SATS background. I'm more than okay. And again, coming to that, I've hired a lot of non-SAS background folks in my team. These reps perform even better than the some of the reps that have come from SAS backgrounds.
yeah,
Um, very, very similar traits that they have. They have that kind of grit in them. They understand quotas really well
yeah.
because they had weekly, uh, what do I say? Like they
Account-
were accountable for weekly outputs, right? So they understand quota very, very well. Their learning aptitude is 2x of any other SDRs. So I think one or in fact more of such cases I had in my teams. One of the reps, 5 years of experience in EdTech. Um, yes, but one particular thing that I really notice when I hire from EdTech or non-stats is have they had a little bit more experience? Like if he or she has like a managerial experience in EdTech, just blindly hire them. Okay. So I've had this rep, 5 years of experience in edtech, zero idea of what a CRM, what is ICP, nothing at all, and was not very polished on calls. Like I did a lot of like, mock calls and was not that great. But every time I gave feedback, there was something implemented in the second mock call. So I just noticed those patterns and hired her. And you wouldn't believe the first 6 months she did minimum of 300 to 400 percentage every month. And because of her, I had to change quotas because my founder is like, this is the benchmark. How can one rep get 400%? And then if you give them the path to their growth, nothing better than that. So again, this is a different topic, but how are you ensuring growth for your SDRs? I often see managers just expecting numbers, but often they have conversations around like, what do you really need to do post this? Like, okay, you are in this role, 3 months gone, 6 months gone. We have to have this conversation with the SDR. Is there a shift in your motivating factor? Are you looking at something else? So I think hiring is one.
yeah.
You definitely can look at these traits. You see someone is performing really well, but can you keep at that, right? And that's again like a different challenging piece altogether. But yeah, it doesn't just end at hiring.
No, absolutely. Like, and that's such a great story of someone's traits that you have been able to identify. And this is what being a manager is, right? You coach someone to excellence, but once they become excellent, your spidey sense almost is on, because you know that that is a diminishing commodity. And how do you
Mm,
ensure that this rep continues to stay successful? How do you ensure
mm,
you're creating a path for him or her
yeah.
to stay motivated?
Yeah, true, true. And obviously, like people tend to, be very attached to that outcome because, like, why on earth would I lose 400% because it's making me look good? Why would I encourage that person to move to a different role or whatever? But I think we have to create such clones within the organization rather than just, hiring like mindlessly. So, Yeah.
No, it's interesting. And it's also a good segue into our next question, right?
Hmm.
There's a difference between reps who go through the motion and reps who own the pipeline. How do you coach for that difference, right? How do you coach for a rep that you know is going through the motion and one that is, you know,
Yeah,
not?
what I tend to do is from the very beginning, you really need to tell them the whys because I often see that, okay, you have an activity target of hitting 100 calls. Do they know the why behind those 100 calls?
Mm,
Right? I don't think you pick any of these teams and they'll be like, yeah, I have this quota, I have this activity index to follow. But why are we making 100 dials? There hardly anyone picking up those kind of stuff, right? So I think, can you build the whys behind what are you really asking them to do? And then create a lot of accountability amongst each other. So there's something that I now follow, wasn't following earlier, but there is like a full deck of, what the standardization of an SDR would look like,
yeah,
where all he or she is expected to excel. And it's not just activity. If you start by that, they'll be like, okay, I made 100 calls.
yeah,
That's it, right? So can you tell them why this 100 calls are important? Can you calculate in front of them and tell them that, hey, 100 calls with this connect ratio, we have an historic stat of that we generally get this kind of connect ratio in this region, and you're part of this region. 100 dials connect ratio. This could be your conversation on a daily level, and this could be your meeting at the end of the day. Given this math, 100 dials are very important on a day-to-day level, right? So you have to give them the why. Second, you have to give them other pieces as well. They shouldn't be a taskmaster, right? They should know that they have to be good at messaging as well. They
mhm,
have to be good at other um, the multi-channel approach, right, that we call it now. They have
yeah,
to be good at emails as well. Probably look at some intent. They have to be good at everything. So can you make them learn that and give them the standard that, okay, this is the standard that we're gonna follow, and I'm here if you are stuck somewhere, and building that accountability. So I'm not saying that accountability means like you keep on asking them, hey, have you done this many calls or not? It's not that tight. Can you tell them that, hey, given that, last week was so and so, let's say we missed our numbers by XYZ. I am doing XYZ to help you, help the team in this week. This is something that I expect from you. The moment you start sharing what you are doing as a manager, and you are also accountable for your actions, they start taking you part of their team. Otherwise, there's high chances SDRs are living their life, you're living your own life. They're treating you as someone, oh, she's come, let's just give her an update and go. So I think that, having a lot of like brainstorming sessions together, a lot of look those office hours together and creating something together, it really helps them, really makes them treat you as part of them. And that's, I think, just build accountability. And you will see that, okay, they now really started to own their pipeline. And you have to like do away with your conversation of, hey, how many meetings did you book? To
yeah,
what kind of conversation did you have today? Like, did you have some good conversation today? Like, can we talk about that?
yeah,
Is there any blocker that we can solve together? And trust me, like, I never asked them how many meetings did they book. I can
yeah.
see that on a dashboard. So it's
Yeah,
just like what kind of conversation you're having.
and I think you've touched upon something very apparent in today's tech sales, right? There
Yeah.
are enough and
And
more,
I'm done.
yeah, pieces of information that both sides have access to, and
Hmm.
creating that space for a meaningful conversation. Hearing from the rep what his or her challenges are, also
Hmm.
gives you a chance to be able to problem solve and take those obstacles away. Learning often happens. I mean, it's great that you're setting up this structure, it's great that you're
Mm.
accessible, but sometimes learning from peers is always better, right? How do you create those environments? Do you have scoreboards? Do you have, peers teaching? How's that happening?
A lot of that actually. So I think there has to be like a continuous enablement for the reps, not just on the product side,
Yeah,
but let's say how are they even tracking some of the metrics that usually they would just like bypass, right? Like, are they really tracking? Are they really seeing their patterns? So
yeah,
I think having those kind of enablement sessions for them, a lot of sessions around like how can, again, you have those tools available for you, but can you use that to your benefit? And I think one of the very lesser known topics, but very important is how are you as a manager ensuring the account executives and SDR relationship?
mm,
Because a lot of learning and good learning will also come from that side. And it's not, it shouldn't be like a one-way street.
yeah,
We booking meetings, we setting it up and not getting anything in return.
yeah,
So, can we have some cadences set up there? Can we have some cadences set up within teams? So I think we follow this a lot that if someone has, let's say, hit a gold mine, let's say got something really well, like maybe got an idea of how to treat lost jobs better, got to share it with the entire team. Um, and I usually make that happen. So during the team meetings, I generally give them the stage to, share it with the team. I think it's again like a two-way problem solver. That person feels really good that he's sharing something that his was his brainchild, and the other reps feel really glad that, oh, nice, right? So I think that is happening. Um and then also in ensuring that how can we bring in a lot of like these product people also,
yeah,
sometimes in between, enablement people also sometimes in between, and then work around what kind of messaging is relevant now, right? Because you will see a lot of product updates happening in the background, and which will come at a very later stage to SDRs, and we are selling something else. Product people are building something else. So I think I started this very early on in ClickPost days itself. So I think SDRs, they get a lot of intel from the market,
yeah,
and again, not well talked about topic. We talk to prospects before A's or any other reps from the team
yeah,
really come across the market, right?
yeah,
How can you get intel from the market without selling? It's the SDRs.
yeah,
So can you have this two-way conversation between a product enablement marketing team and SDRs? Like constant feedback loop has to be there. I know very peculiarly that we were receiving a lot of inbound leads, right?
mm,
And if we summed those intel that we got, I had a very, very straightforward answer of what could be our next product, um,
yeah,
that we could make. And we reached out to the product team and we gave that intel that, hey, I think you should definitely make this. Like 10 out of 20 prospects are asking if you have this. So they really added that into their product roadmap. This is what how important an SDR role is. You can change the trajectory of the entire org, the product team, right? So I think having a very, very close feedback loop between marketers, SDR team, enablement sessions, whatever campaigns they build, right? It's usually like, hey, you will receive XYZ number of leads on probably next week. We are sharing so many leads across you, but can you give us a little bit more intel? Like, how did you get those leads? What was some of the messaging that you used to get those leads before our SDRs reach out, right? And a lot of these events that happens nowadays, SDRs are also supposed to reach out to those. We haven't been to that event, so can you pass information to us before you even expect us to convert some of these leads, right? So I don't know how much I stayed relevant on this topic, but yeah, it's I think a summation of having a lot of like feedback loops across departments.
I think this was it started off as a simple question, but it gave so much of insight into how important um, you as an SDR leader and your team is the bridge between the customer and the company, right? And
Yeah,
this that exchange of information, both sides,
both
has
sides.
to be meaningful. And I think there is a lesson for founders out there, right? Like founders are always looking, and CEOs as well are always looking to grow their business. But you've touched upon something which founders will love is we can help you grow your TAM, right? You mentioned how you gave a product idea, which was not something that the founding team and the founders were thinking of, and suddenly here's another 10 million, 100 million, billion-dollar market that was unlocked. And I think that shows the value of a well-functioning
Mm.
SDR team. So that's great.
Mm.
Okay, we will now move to another favorite topic of yours, I think, coaching.
Okay.
uh, I you've coached dozens of SDRs, right?
Hmm.
Give us the secret sauce of what makes coaching actually work.
Okay, so I do two type of coaching really. One is definitely the internal team that I'm handling, and then I'm also talking to a lot of reps who are trying to enter the industry. So, which one of this would you want to deep dive into?
Let's start with how you coach your teams first.
Hmm.
And what are some of the techniques that you feel work better than others?
So, I think first step is documenting. I think a lot of these one-on-ones or these coaching sessions are they become like a dinner table conversations, but you got to have again a structure to what are we really talking about this week, telling them beforehand so that they also prep,
Yeah,
right? Now I don't want to go to an one-on-one without reps coming in with the intel that they have seen, with the patterns that they have seen about themselves, right? Otherwise, again, it's just a one-way conversation. I'm saying something, the rep hears, and then, hey, we'll meet next week. So that I think should not be the scenario. I think you should have a structure. This week we are covering XYZ topic. In the one-on-one, the rep should bring in something, maybe a cold call, right? That the reps feel that they need more input in. So they bringing some of these things that they want, like a very personalized coaching on. And then I bringing in some of the things that I think is important for his or her growth this week or next week, right? So I think it has to be a little bit, again, a two-way street.
yeah,
So starting with a lot of like documentation. Second, understanding a lot of patterns. So I don't want to treat rep A. Um, I mean, I would want to treat a rep A differently from a rep B. And all of these reps bring in a very different flavor to the game. A
yeah,
rep A will be very good with cold call, may not be very good with emails, may not be very good with follow-ups. A rep B could be very good with personalized emails, but really uh, pushing himself away from cold call blocks and doing whatever he or she really likes to do. So I think understanding the patterns, not really forcing them to be like a master in all, but can I push them to have a standard in all the areas possible? Because I'm making them into sales folks who want to get into like maybe an account executive role, maybe customer success, maybe any other role.
yeah.
He or she should understand all areas. So how can I coach them on all these channels? He could be best at one, but should have a standard for all the other channels. Now, my understanding of one-on-ones is usually that, again, talking about numbers, maybe 5 minutes,
Yeah.
right? We have to talk about that. The rest of the time, really understanding the gap and then talking about that, doing a lot of practice together. Because usually when these sessions are happening, these enablement sessions and these trainings and all, there isn't enough practicing sessions. And I don't expect a team meeting to be full of practicing it, right? So I think that one-on-one time is wherein you practice a lot of this pitch.
If we started out with a rapid fire round, we'll also end with a
Okay.
yeah, again, short, sharp, quick answers.
Mm,
More sales related now that you're very
okay.
comfortable with this conversation. Okay. So one underrated SDR skill.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this before. Knowing when to stop. Very
Awesome.
underrated.
And you stopped perfectly. India versus US SDRs, one major difference.
Okay. I think US is a little bit more value driven, whereas India is a little bit more relationship driven. So, yeah.
Advice to someone in month one as an SDR.
I would say that they have to learn beyond their role also, like in that particular 1 month. Don't even think about numbers. It's all learning, learning, learning. I often see people are jumping into doing their calls or booking that first meeting because they want to get that adrenaline rush of like, I'm doing great, but then they forget about like what's the product really about. So spending a lot of time into enablement in the very first month. Don't think about numbers.
Interesting. My advice to someone in month one as an SDR is it will get easier. Okay.
No.
Advice to founders scaling from one to three SDRs.
Okay, now this would be a little controversial. I think after you have your founding SDR, get that RevOps guy. It would be a little controversial. I know a lot of people would say, no, I need my SDRs, but can you, again, you will be having three, four, five SDRs, not knowing the pattern within the team, not knowing what are you really chasing. If you don't have someone who understands a little bit more, like pipeline analytics, data enrichment, those kind of things. I was the founding SDR. The next person I hired was a market research guy, not the next SDR. So once we both were set, I hired continuously.
Okay. So you're almost setting up the business to scale. You've got early success, you've got
Yeah,
early product market fit, but then now to scale, you need the system
yeah.
in there. Great advice. Um, I know this favorite book or podcast to recommend.
I think we already talked about it, 30 Minutes to President's Club. But usually outside work, I don't stick to sales books. I go to the
What's a
non-fictions.
non-sales podcast that you like or book?
So th there's this one particular podcast on the Mahabharata story that's a really beautifully narrated Mahabharata story.
We'll link it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Um, one thing you're building or learning right now, and I'm going to keep this non-sales. So
Uh, I don't know, but yeah, definitely right now what I'm really trying to learn is how do I be more consistent with LinkedIn? So building that kind of brand. And then eventually I know I'm like breaking this, but eventually I want to start something of my own. So I'm actually researching a lot around that area in my free time.
lovely. So you're building something in stealth, like all the founders like to say. Okay, so this brings us to the end. I am taking away is how intentional you are in your role, both as an individual contributor when you started out,
Mm.
and then you've brought that intentionality almost to the people you manage, the company that you work with, and I think that's a great lesson for SDRs, SDR managers, and really all sorts of salespeople who are looking to to build a career in this field. So we always do this as a last question before we end.
Mm.
Vandana, what is the kindest thing someone has done for you?
Oh, okay. There could be more, but I think there was this SDR that I hired, uh, and he was not even graduate. So I went against the norms and I hired him as an SDR. And then he had to go for his student exchange program, and he had to leave. I knew this was coming, but I still had him. And I think before he left for his exchange program, he sent me this coffee mug and this very sweet note, and then he wrote it like, "Do take that coffee break when you're like done with it, because I know you put in a lot." So I think that was a very, I mean, people usually just gift, right? But that was a very thoughtful letter, and with that gift. So I think that was like very sweet moment that I still remember. Uh, yeah, but yeah, something
Lovely,
that just pops up. Yeah.
lovely.
Mm.
Vandana, thank you so much for your time. And before we go, do you want to give the listeners where they can reach out to you?
I think this is the only place I am more on LinkedIn than on Instagram. So just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I have this profile link as well, wherein you can just go and click in and book your session with me. If you just want to like chit chat around what's happening, how do you really deal with your current role, or even if you're like looking out for anything for future. So I'm just all yours. So yeah, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Vandana, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kadi. It was just great having this conversation. Thank you.
One.